Welcome in Fantasy Play-Callers.
I feel like things are different than they normally are.
Yeah, something weird has happened.
There's a shift in the universe right now.
Is this the Matrix? Is this what the Matrix feels like?
Yeah.
Did we get a room?
We have a room.
We have a room.
This is a different place than you're used to seeing us. Welcome. We're glad to have you guys here with us in a new place, in a different kind of show format today as well. We're going to go through some different stuff. This is trade deadline week, and so we get to kind of talk about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the NFL. We will get to that. But first, we're going to get into some waiver wire pickups, get you guys some of that great advice, and so that way you can use this for your waiver wires, and also may your bids just be $1 above.
$1 above.
$1 above.
Forever and ever.
The next closest person. Yes. Yes.
I think we have some good. I've got to clarify, at least for mine with the waiver wires. Some of these are some stash ones. I feel like this week was really the guys who you wanted to perform in fantasy finally performed.
Yep.
There weren't a lot of these weird little names who popped up and had some high performances. Maybe a couple, but I saw the scores and it was like the top 30 scorers who were over 25 points, and it's just absolutely absurd in non-quarterback position.
There's some monster games out there by people that you're waiting on or recent pickups, and that
Finally,
after
a really slow season in the NFL, not a lot of offense. It's been a very everybody always says it's bad offense, but I think the truth is it's also good defense, right? We can do it both ways. But the offense finally got one this week, which is nice for the most part. If you don't count the Raiders, which we don't, so as if you don't know, put up a goose egg. So for sure. But there's definitely some good waiver wire pickups. Lots of action this week, and I guess I can kick us off here with our waiver wire pickups. Let's talk a little bit about running backs here. We mentioned it is getting to that point in the season where things are kind of settled in, and so the waiver wire has been picked through a little bit at this point, and it's getting tough to find guys that have that potential to win you the league and to be, that starter. And so what I was looking for this week is I was looking for players that were behind bruiser veterans, so veteran running backs that are going to take some damage and have a good chance of possibly getting injured to allow you to kind of have that opportunity. And so I went with Rachaad White here. He's only 30% owned, which is pretty nice. Should be available in just about any league that you're looking for him. And he's been over 7 points, for the last 4 weeks here. So he is playable in a pinch, but he's definitely not, going to be, your league winner until if Leonard Fournette does get hurt, then he's going to have lots of opportunities and should jump up as far as, priority. So
10 out of 10 agree. Big Lenny's a dangerous running back, so.
Yeah, he's
very violent.
He's violent, right? And it's all it takes is one hit, one concussion, one shoulder injury, knee injury, and then all of a sudden the young guy comes in. So
yeah, absolutely. I've talked about him a few weeks back. We talked about him a few weeks back, and I think it's continuous. It's crazy that he's still only 30% owned. Like he's getting more timeshare with Lenny. Actually, it's becoming not just 90% Lenny, and he
was at like 40% the last few weeks. I mean, it's been crazy.
He's getting snaps and he's getting targets, which is the weird thing.
And he's looked on those catches. He's looked really explosive. Yeah, so I agree.
This is a guy, as Eli mentioned, we've been talking about him
a few weeks.
Yeah, the last probably 3 or 4 weeks, and he's still 30% owned, guys. Yeah. If you're listening to the play callers, this is a guy you should go
This is the time of year to start looking for these handcuffs or these high-end handcuffs, because injuries are going to start happening more and more, and especially as we get towards the playoffs, having some of those guys is going to really push you over the edge. So
10 out of 10, agree. Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
I think you should do your next one because I think it still fits in that vein of good ones for injuries.
Back to back, it's the same theme here. So the other person I'm kind of picking on is Leonard Fournette, sure, as that big bruiser, but so is Derrick Henry. As great as he has been this year, and we expect him to still be great, for the rest of the season if he does stay healthy. But he's a violent runner, and once again, he kind of faces a lot of that same risk. Dontrell Hilliard has done a great job stepping in. He had a great week this week. 8 carries for over 80 yards and a touchdown was fantastic. He's only 12% owned. And if Henry goes down, instantly this becomes a blow your whole waiver wire on this guy. So like we always say, pick him up a week early. If something does happen to Henry, you'll be ready. Especially if you have Henry, go grab him. You don't want to leave him out there because someone else will snake him from behind you, and that could ruin your season.
And just to throw this out here real quick, he even had 2 really good weeks at the beginning of the season where Derrick Henry was kind of lacking, and he was, pulling through, was getting touchdowns, getting yards, had an almost equal snap count Might have been the injury, but still kind of good to look at that kind of guy. That's something you want to see.
Yeah, it has much better hands than Henry too, who is known
He's
for his
got
kind of stone hands there. So he gets used in the passing game a little bit as well, and that can also pick him up real quick if you're PPR. So
yeah, I think so. I think I prefer Rashard White over him by quite a bit. I think he's a good backup, and I think it's good to have. But Rashard White has more youth, more explosiveness, and more of an opportunity, because if King Henry's on the field, he's going to get 95% of the work, where there's more of a split between.
White is still usable even if Fournette is in.
White has the potential of overtaking Lenny potentially.
Yeah,
like
just by
having a more talented in over time, where that is nearly impossible with King Henry unless he gets hurt. So that's the only other way that actually happens.
Yeah, Hilliard is definitely injury. That's a good point.
Yes.
It's a really good point.
Yep.
Can I go?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think mine fits in kind of at least my first one. And then my second one is actually a direct product of what Ethan was talking about. Ronnie Rivers, 4% owned in leagues, has benefited significantly from some of the running back drama that's going on his team. Yeah. But he's getting a higher snap count. He's, because of these injuries and whatever drama's going on with Cam Akers
holding out.
Nobody knows. Yeah. But he had 4 targets, brought them all in, which is great. He's got good hands, and he definitely shows knowledge with field position and explosiveness. The guy knows where he needs to be. He knows where he needs to plan himself to catch those balls, and good asset from Matt Stafford, who's kind of figuring out who else to throw to other than Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's incredibly rare to see a guy at 4% ownership in fantasy football leagues with that high of a snap count.
Oh yeah.
A snap percentage. So I mean,
he's somebody who I would definitely stash if I had the availability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could put him on the bench, see what happens for sure. I know Henderson's been hurt a little bit too, and Cam Akers is not coming back. So
no, they were fielding offers for him. And
I think really, I know we'll talk about that, but he didn't get traded. That's one that we'll probably mention a little bit later. But he might even get cut.
Yeah.
So
And then my next one is Kenyon Drake. I do want to put a big asterisk on this one because Baltimore's backfield is a mess, and it's really hard to pick a running back, especially somebody who's not necessarily has as much rapport with the team. Lamar Jackson is clearly the starting running back for them, as well as the starting quarterback. But one thing that you can't say about Kenyon Drake is whenever he has over 50% of snaps, he does really well. In the last 2 games, he's had over 50% snaps. I think the last week he had 19 points in standard, and I think he had 17 in standard this week, and he had over 50%. So somebody who, when he does see higher field time, definitely has a higher yield.
Opportunities in that offense are huge, and anybody who's getting them, and Drake has done pretty well with them as well.
Yeah, he has.
But those read option offenses with that quarterback threat, right? It's like, think about it as a defense. What do? It's like, it's a nightmare, and guys like Kenyon Drake can take advantage of that. And still only own in 39% of leagues. That's nuts.
And Lamar Jackson, the only thing, again, the asterisk, if Lamar Jackson, the pocket collapses, he's not always looking for a dump pass to a running back a lot of quarterbacks are. Lamar Jackson's going to run. So, this one is kind of a buyer beware. But if you're really hurting and you've kind of been on the brunt end of these injuries and things like that, I think this is one that might have a good yield for you.
Yeah, I think this is one that especially help you in the short term, the next 1 or 2 weeks, because Gus Edwards is dealing with a hamstring right now, so he should potentially be sidelined for the next game, maybe the 2 games, which really would lean towards Kenyon Drake getting more majority of the carries with J.K. Dobbins currently on IR. So I think this is a good one for, especially, you can keep him longer term, but you have more value in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
He'll hold you over.
Absolutely. We'll go back to more of a timeshare when Edwards gets back.
And Edwards was the lead dog before he got hurt, but Kenyon Drake was still mixed in a lot.
He was.
So it'd be still have a lot of value. I will go through my 2 running backs here, kind of in a similar vein. I did want to talk about one that is still really not owned anywhere, and I really think this is something that needs to change this week. We're talking about Jalen Warren. He's currently 5% owned out there in Yahoo leagues. Really, it's just he's looked good. I'll go through kind of the snap breakdown and stuff like that, but Najee Harris has looked awful. And it's
That's
not
an
only his
understatement.
usage, but his actual play on the field.
You mean Trent Richardson?
Yes, I heard some comparisons out there, and that's like the kiss of death. So
that's hard.
there was one play out there, I don't know if you guys saw, he caught a pass, and he was like stuttering.
Yes.
It looked like he was stuttering in place for like a minute, and then he like finally made a move.
You see the picture of the field, and he's like a yard in front of the line of scrimmage, and there's literally nobody in front of him. And
For 5 yards.
And he netted 0 yards on that play. Like
the efficiency's been really bad.
It's rough.
And Jalen Warren's just been more efficient back. And so the Steelers have noticed that. So last week he had 6 carries, 50 yards. He had 2 receptions for 25 yards. More importantly, he had almost 30% of the snap share. If we remember Najee Harris, the reason why everybody wanted to draft him is because he had every carry and every snap possible.
that's why I drafted him, yeah.
And that's what everybody thought they were going to happen this year. And obviously his inefficient play, again, could be explained a little bit by the injury, but either way, whether there's injury or not, right now he's not efficient. So they're going to continue to think to get Jalen and Warren involved. And if that's the case, you need to have this guy on your team. He's looked good. He's getting snaps, and Najee hasn't. So he really has some low-end flex value with the high-end handcuffs that we'd like to target.
Well, and you were talking about Rachaad White being one of those guys who can take over. I definitely think Jalen Warren is one of those guys who could take over if Najee Harris can. I mean, he's been in a free fall, essentially.
He has the potential. And maybe his injury gets worse, or they really think that's really affecting him. Maybe they put Najee on IR. That's something that could happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we talked about, big bruiser backs are great targets for handcuffs because they tend to get hurt a little bit more. Well, Najee is that to a T. I mean, that's a big guy taking a lot of carries, and tends to hit hard and fall forward.
Already has a big injury that is prone for re-aggravation.
Yep, and he's already hurt. So, I mean, this is a great place to look, and the fact that he's only owned in 5% of leagues is, quite frankly, is a joke.
It is really a joke.
Yeah. So
we expect that to change, and we'll check it next week.
Man, let's hope.
Right. Play callers know better.
Exactly. My last one is somebody who was probably popular to pick up last week, but because he got injured, I think his percentage maybe fell down a little bit. His running mate had huge week, almost the top running back for this week, Devontae Foreman. I'm talking about Chuba Hubbard. He's currently 43% owned. Like I said, Foreman had all the carries this week because he was out with an ankle injury.
Sorry.
He had a great game. I expect that to continue. Like, Foreman's still going to be involved, and he's probably going to be the lead back going forward. But if you remember the first week that Christian McCaffrey got traded, it was a split, and it was actually Foreman had 54% of the snaps, and Hubbard had 46% of the snaps. So it was almost an even split before the injury. Mm-hmm. Now, I know Foreman had this huge game. He's probably going to take over the backfield, but it's still going to be a split. And Hubbard actually had a great game the week before when they both were actually there, too. So he had over 100 yards from scrimmage that week as well. So I think it's going to be a split. So having a starter or usable running back, especially in these bye weeks, I think is really good. And then obviously, I think actually Hubbard is more the passing down back than Foreman would actually be too.
Well, I mean, if you guys don't remember last year when Christian McCaffrey was out, Chuba Hubbard was
the main guy.
I mean, he slid right in and he was perfect. He fit that. He did all the pass work that Christian McCaffrey's used to. The change of pace for the Panthers backfield just didn't really change. He was a great fit. So.
Yeah, so I would definitely keep an eye on the injury report to see what's going to happen with him. Just make sure he's going to play this next week. From what I've been seeing, he's been treading that way, but I think he's going to be a great fill-in for you for some bye weeks for running back. So.
I agree. Some guys, just to mention that if you check in your league and see if they're owned, they're definitely over 50%. Donta Foreman, 72% in 12-man leagues. And then Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert's a big guy who's getting more work than David Montgomery.
I want to trade. So I would double check because 64% is just over the threshold. So that's not. He could be available in some leagues, but I would go out and try to trade for Herbert right now.
Absolutely,
he looks like the better back, and
they're giving him a lot.
He at least has flex value. If anything happens, he's already proven. If anything happens to Montgomery, he explodes.
I also saw a very interesting stat where he has more average yards after contact per carry than Montgomery does per carry.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
Which is insane. That's an insane stat.
And they did say, the coach came out and did say that they're going to ride the hot hand. And currently it looks like Herbert has a hot hand. So we'll see how that's going to play out the rest of the season. But you just want these type of players on your team, barring injury, or they eventually overtake their starter. So
for sure.
With that, I think we're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it for running back. Other than that, you're digging at the bottom of the barrel. So let's go to wide receivers.
I think for this one, I think you should start because you have a guy who, as your big one, who you've talked about previously. You've stamped on the table. You've got on your soapbox. You've been doing it.
This is more for just my mental health, and I'm hoping that this is the case. Ethan has him in a few leagues as well. So from Dynasty leagues, I think you have him. So I think you're feeling the pain a little bit here too. Talking about Garrett Wilson for the New York Jets. He currently is 48% rostered. He finally had a big week. I don't think anybody started him because how could you? Because
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, anytime you look at the screen, like, oh yeah, that's right, Zach Wilson's running the ball. So this is not going to be a good experience for anybody. But he did have 7 targets, 6 receptions, 115 yards. So a really great game. There's a couple reasons why this occurred, in my opinion, and then kind of what makes sense for the narrative is Corey Davis is out with injury, so that opened up some more opportunities for him. And also Elijah Moore did come back and play after holding out, basically, but he only played 10 snaps. So he's currently still in the doghouse, and
might be for a little bit.
He still might be for a little bit. He might come back, maybe get more playing time. We'll see how that kind of plays out for him. But all that points to Garrett Wilson getting a large majority of the target share. So even if there are bad targets, even if they're coming from Zach Wilson, which nobody wants to hear that.
He's just having fun. Just let him do his thing.
It's still a majority of the targets, and as long as he catches the ball, he can make some stuff happen. So I think he's worth at least putting on your bench. And to see him dip below that 50% makes sense. I really think you should have him just in case.
Yeah.
What if Zach Wilson gets hurt? You get the Flacco experience again. So yeah.
This is Wilson versus Wilson because you have the good of Garrett Wilson versus the bad of Zach Wilson, and every week someone wins.
Mostly Zach Wilson.
Because
the bad outweighs the good a lot.
But there have been multiple weeks where Garrett Wilson has done really well, even with Zach Wilson, and especially with Joe Flacco. But even with Zach Wilson, and there's been a couple of these big spike weeks you see. And if you can predict those, that'd be great. But otherwise,
yes.
I'm sorry, Garrett Wilson. Too many Wilsons. Garrett Wilson, like we talked about in one of the other podcasts, is that he looks like one of the best receivers in this draft. Mm-hmm. It's just he has the unfortunate circumstance that he got put on the same team as Zach Wilson, and
Corey Davis and Zach Wilson are apparently best dang friends. That's all I gotta say. I don't know what they do. They're in an Xbox party or a PS2 party, or he's going to breakfast with his mom. Probably some blackmail going on there, but no, I don't know. But Corey Davis has been soaking up his targets.
Yes. And Braxton Berrios, weirdly enough, is getting a little, not as much as Corey Davis, but he also gets put back in more.
We're not going to make Zach Wilson throw a ton. We see what happens in that. He just threw
20 or less.
20 or less. Anything over that, he averages like 2 or 3 interceptions a game. So
I will say this. Do you think that this has to do, yes, with Elijah Moore being out, but also with the Breece Hall injury, where they do have to kind of force their hand to pass a little more, too?
I think the Breece Hall, I think the fact that Corey Davis is not there, Zach Wilson is looking to, he really has to prove himself this year, because he's had 2 pretty subpar years. Really has not changed much this year, other than the fact that they have a winning record. So, I mean, they're looking to do whatever they can. Yeah. And more throws equals more targets equals more receptions. Like, it's just a win situation for Wilson.
No, I agree. No, it's a really good point. I would agree that does have some impact on, obviously, one of the best younger running backs to go down in injury for RIP. We miss you.
Come back, please.
Come back, please.
Come back soon.
I feel like Wolverine
for my Dynasty leagues.
So they did trade for James Robinson, so they're going to try to continue the running piece of it. They're just not going to be able to do it as effectively with James Robinson because he's not very effective. And Michael Carter-Williams is a good scat back, a good receiving back, but those really long. The hard yards are hard for him. He's a smaller back. So I think that they're just going to be forced to make Zach Wilson throw, and I don't think they want that because they have a good defense. They actually have a good offense line, so we'll see. But I think that in the game scripts, they'll be behind. I think they'll have to throw a lot more.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm going to go with one of mine next.
Yeah,
and mine is very obvious. I really don't feel like I have to say very much about him. Duvernay. With the Ravens, 50% of leagues. There's no reason this guy should be on in 50% of leagues. I mean, he was a seriously undervalued role. I think he was ranked 3,000th or something with the total rankings going into the season. Yeah. He's had multiple good games. Clearly, he's the lead role right now. And I think that even when Bateman comes back, it's definitely going to be one of those ones where he could steal his job. And he could be the number one guy there.
Yep. Well, the other thing about this is that with Mark Andrews being out and Bateman being out, it's like someone's got to get these targets.
And he can do it.
It's going to be him and Isaiah Likely and some other guys, and for sure, I think especially in the short run.
I really think I think Duvernay has a longer impact. I don't think that this is something that's just going to continue because of the injuries. Because before the injuries, he was still pretty good. It's just
it won't go away when they come back. But while they're gone, it's extra juicy,
it's
right?
Be good, yeah.
So
he's proven that he can do it. So I really don't think that there's very much more that I can say about this guy. If he's available and you got the spot, there's no reason for you to not have him.
Yep. And I cheated a little bit because Darnell Mooney is technically owned in 52% of leagues. We try and keep it under 50 here.
Got to give our boy some love, though.
But I got to mention him just because he's just above that threshold and he really should not be there. Over the last 4 weeks, he's had consistently over 10 points. They just got Chase Claypool to help out, Justin Fields as far as opening up the offense a little bit more as well, which I do think helps Mooney and doesn't hurt him because there was no one else to throw to at all. He's getting double covered all the time. And so you can't do that because Chase Claypool, for all the other things that he is a field stretcher. He's 6'4". He runs a very fast 40 time in the 4.4s. And so it's like you have to respect that as well. And so that being said, I think this opens things up for Mooney and the Bears offense overall. So
Mooney's a great receiver. I mean, last year he had similar numbers to, I've said this like 5 times, Terry McLaurin. And he's drafted significantly different going into this year. He just has the unfortunate reality that he plays for the Bears. So it's, kind of a hard situation for him to swallow. I think it's going to be better, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think, and they're going to have to throw the ball more in order for it to be better for him, but I think that they will, and I think that's got to open up eventually.
So I was all about this too, actually, looking at Darnell Mooney, but after that Claypool trade, it's such a small pie as far as throwing is concerned, and it's been for 8 weeks. It's not a small sample size of how many times he throws. It's typically 20. It's like 22 or 20.
The most that he's thrown so far this year is 26.
Yeah.
So it's really
it's usually around 20 and below as far as pass attempts are concerned. When you have that small of a pie, you got to hit a big play, and you got to hope for a touchdown, and that can happen, but it's just one of those things where it's hit or miss. He has been consistent recently, but he doesn't have another target besides to go to. Cole Kmet was the other person really was throwing the ball. So I like him. I like his talent. That's my only concern. I would still pick him up and see what happens.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'll jump to mine. I want to put this one out there because there's some injuries that kind of went on. So Mike Williams is currently out for about 4 or 5 weeks, I believe.
I saw 4.
Was it 4 weeks?
I think it's
4.
He
definitely went on IR for 4 weeks. So I did want to mention Joshua Palmer, who is 26% rostered. He is good to pick up, especially for the Mike Williams owner. He's a good person to start in place of Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's been hurt for the majority of the year.
The whole year.
Yes, that's true. Majority of the year. He did come back last week, but he's on a limited snap count, and he should be good this week. Even if he is, they need more wide receiver help, and he is the next person up. Josh Palmer is. He's looked good. He hasn't lived up to some of the hype because he filled in for Keenan Allen a little bit, but he's been averaging some really good amount of targets while they've been out. So where you're looking for some wide receiver help, like you want to get targets, and this is a high passing offense. You have Herbert, who's usually a good person to have a quarterback to throw you the ball, and they're going to need it. Their defense hasn't been playing well. They've been throwing the ball a lot, so I think this will be a good replacement or bye week fill-in. The only caveat is, I believe, I should have looked this up. I think they're on bye this week.
No, they were on bye last week.
So I'm sorry. No, not bye.
Yep.
He is coming off of a concussion from the last game, so something to monitor. I think he was coming through. He's planning to play this week, but just I knew there's a caveat. I forgot what it was. That's the caveat.
Make sure he clears concussion protocol.
Yep.
Although still might be worth a stash, even if he doesn't.
Because 4 weeks
I think he is.
Is he?
Yeah, I think he's worth it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've everything that I've seen is that he's going to play, but I mean, with the way that the Chargers have been, you really won't know until it's game time, and they've had a lot of weird stuff like that. So.
Yeah, just a couple things like a couple weeks where he filled in for Keenan. He had 6 targets, 12 targets, 9 targets. Like those targets are there, and if he connects on a few of those, you're sitting pretty well. So.
I like him. I think he's good. I with the fact that I was a chump and I drafted Keenan Allen. All respect, Keenan Allen. I love you, but you kind of screwed me this year.
Yeah, it sucks.
He was a good fill-in when Keenan Allen would be cleared out on the day of.
It was a great pick up and fill. At least you know what you're getting.
Yeah, and you did exactly.
You
what
want opportunities, and you got opportunities. So.
Yeah. For mine, this is a weird one, so I gotta clarify this one again. Terrace Marshall. 5% of leagues owned. He got 9 targets last week, which it's a lot. I would say that's a lot for a relatively unknown guy. Not a lot of people have heard of this guy before. Not a lot of people knew that he was even elevated to the actual roster. But Walker is a great change-up for the team. PJ Walker's looking good. They're going to play the hot hand. They've already declared that he's going to be the starter, even with Baker Mayfield being healthy. Finally. And I really think that they're looking to throw the ball more. It's clear with the fact that they've got DJ Moore involved in the offense, who finally was putting up numbers which we would expect him to put up.
Walker looked good throwing the ball this last week.
He
looked very good.
Looked very in zone. And they looked good. They had a high scoring game. Even though they lost, they still had a really high scoring game. I would say Terrace Marshall is somebody who to pick up. You probably are going to be able to get him for free because he's owned in so few leagues, and people aren't really expecting him to repeat.
Yeah.
But he might be a good place to replace, or a good stash to replace Robbie Anderson. They're definitely looking for that wide receiver too on this team. So
yeah, and this happens a lot when you get a backup quarterback in. Is that a wide receiver a little bit lower on the depth chart sometimes will come up and start playing really well because they have that chemistry built in with the quarterback already. These guys have played together in the preseason. They play together in practice squads and everything else. And so it's like,
reps,
look, if PJ Walker is the starting quarterback and he is comfortable throwing the ball to Terrence Marshall, then Terrence Marshall is going to get significantly more targets, and that translates into fantasy points.
Yeah, and he was actually hyped last offseason.
Big time.
Pretty heavy in the offseason. It just didn't live up to the hype. Didn't get a lot of playing time based off of the targets that went to Robbie and DJ. And the quarterback play, which has always been an issue in Carolina. But yeah, I do think PJ Walker has looked pretty good, actually. He made that throw to DJ for the tying touchdown was an absolute bomb. It was on the money, so it was pretty good. But,
it looks like last year, he had played a good bit of snaps early on, and then pretty much week 6 on, his snap count just went through a free fall. His really was either getting 0 targets, or his most was 2, did nothing with them. Yeah. And that's it.
And this was the third guy on the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson LSU team.
Yeah.
Let's not forget here that we're all there together and we're lighting everything up with Joe Burrow and whatnot. And so there's big expectations for Terrence Marshall, who was drafted, I believe, in the 2nd round.
Yep.
And under this new regime, he might finally be living up to those. And sometimes all it takes is a change and some opportunities. And guys can show you what they really have.
And they're looking for. Again, they got to replace Robbie Anderson. They got rid of a pretty, I would say, an integral piece of their offense. You can't just have DJ Moore out there catching passes. He can't be the only one. Curtis Samuel's been gone for a while, so the Panthers have really been looking for their number 2 for a while. And
they're reloading. They're looking for young talent. Terrence Marshall's still on a rookie contract.
Yep.
So it's only just in his 2nd year, so they have another 2 years with him on the rookie contract after this year. So for sure. Speaking of rookie contracts. I love these rookie wide receivers in this class here.
Yes, you do.
So I'm going to go right back to Jahan Dotson, who started off the season really on fire. He scored 4 touchdowns in his first 4 games, despite being, quote-unquote, the 3rd wide receiver in that offense. And the offense looked significantly better when he was on the field than when he was not on the field. And that's nothing against Scary Terry, nothing against Curtis Samuel and the likes. But at the same time, Jahan Dotson brings a different element to this offense that those guys really don't. In my opinion, in that he's a bit better at possession catches than the other 2 guys. And so I think that he really complements what they bring to the table.
Yep. You can't leave any of them open. And that's the thing, is who are you going to leave open? Are you going to leave Curtis Samuel, or are you going to leave Jahan Dotson, or are you going to leave Scary Terry open? You can't.
And they're all very quick.
Yeah.
All 3 of them are. And so in that light, I just think that the offense gets a lot better when all 3 of these guys are actually on the field together. Dotson is back, which I think is good news for everybody, and I think it's going to be good for Dotson.
I I can't say enough nice things about John.
No, I agree. He's definitely one to pick up for sure. Hopefully he's on his way back from the injury. He said
that's as of now he expects to play. Once again, monitor his status throughout the week. He has missed, I believe, the last 4 weeks. But
he definitely was involved. He was targeted a lot in the end zone and had a lot of touchdowns, which I think that's one of his best strength is the contested catch balls, and I think he could definitely be used for like that again because they don't really have. Terry's a smaller wide receiver. Curtis is a small wide receiver. When they get down there, they do a lot of running or target the tight end. So he was definitely used a lot down in the red zone, and that's where he got a lot of his fantasy points from. He still got some decent targets, but it'll be interesting. I think he's definitely one to pick up, stash, and see what happens for these next few weeks and see how he does getting back healthy. It is. Caveat though, it is a different quarterback currently, and we'll see when Carson comes back. So we'll see how that plays out.
Hey man, Taylor Heineke's looking okay. He ain't bad.
It's
better. He's definitely Carson Wentz is probably the better one of the two, but Taylor Heineke's got a lot.
Well, and Heineke hasn't had the luxury of having all three of those guys out there yet, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens.
Heineke plays like he don't give a damn about nothing. He's like, I'm just throwing this ball whether it's going to the other team or not.
He's a gunslinger, baby.
I
mean, he's got nothing to lose. No one expects him to.
AFL, wherever he came from, I forgot. But
he's got nothing else.
Whichever one of those leagues is still around.
Yeah.
I just to gloss over, but we're not going to say very. Oh, you got
no. There's a couple I want to mention too.
Yeah, just to gloss over him very briefly because we're going to talk a little bit more about him in depth later. Kadarius Toney, if he's available, 51% of leagues.
Yep.
If he's not rostered. Eli's going to tell you why later, but definitely keep a lookout for him.
If it's not rostered, you're crazy.
Yeah,
you're crazy.
And then you want to...
A couple stashes. Traylon Burke, 16%, and currently rostered. I think he'd be a good stash. The Titans haven't really had anybody else step up. Robert Woods has played as best as he could, but he's just old and broken. So
and Traylon Burks has been hurt all season. Kyle Phillips has been hurt all season.
Yeah.
The veteran, Robert Woods, the only one that stayed healthy somehow. The two rookies are out.
They don't need him, though. They got Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
They're good. Derrick Henry's back. He's 28 years old, and he's looking better than ever.
What do we need? We need Derrick Henry in a defense.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
And then two other players I want to mention that are also really good picks up this week. I'm not going to go through a bunch of them, but I'll get you guys' quick opinions. But Rondale Moore for the Cardinals, who had a really big week on last week, Thursday night, had 23 fantasy points. I think he'll be really good until Hollywood Brown comes back, which I think he's going to be out for another 3 to 4 weeks.
I thought he's out for a little bit.
Let
me look.
I'm
pretty sure.
4 to 5. Yeah,
so that's a lot of value you can have, and he'll play that slot role, and he's getting a lot of targets, and they're playing from behind a lot, and he's not that owned currently. So I think that would be one that I would try to at least look for as well. And then one last one, I promise. And then Romeo Doubs. So he had a good week finally. He's at 48%, so he's below that 50% threshold. I just keep an eye out. If he's on, he might not be. He's at 48%, but I think they're still trying to figure out who their go-to wide receiver is for the Packers, and why not have the rookie who's just scored a big touchdown. So.
Yeah, Doubs was a guy who would have been drafted higher had it not been for an injury, and is really proven to be one of the better, rookie wide receivers in this class, playing for a team that's got Aaron Rodgers on it.
Yeah, he's had some down weeks the last few weeks.
That might not be a good thing anymore.
And he's had some drops. And Aaron had to do like a interview, and he called out, you see that? He called out his wide receivers and said, we might have to make some snap changes and stuff. I think that was directed at Doubs. But he came through this last week. Had the big touchdown, so
he said the guys making the mental error shouldn't be out there. I think is what.
And Doubs made quite a few mental errors.
Absolutely.
Before, so
Aaron's just
subtweeting.
I got some things to say. We're gonna.
Okay, that's all. I just want to throw those names out there just because those are also really good pickups to really kind of have to scour. So. All right, let's do our streams, though. We need help people out there just struggling for QBs and tight ends.
Let's start with the QBs. I don't have one this week, unfortunately. I just
you're good.
Didn't go with it. I figured your two hit the nail on the head. I think they're great ones that we can do.
I'm excited about mine. I'll be honest. I don't know why me starting. So it kind of plays off your Darnell Mooney. And
I'm skeptical.
You'll probably talk about this more in the trade side of it because there's a little bit more assets. I won't dive into that, but... Justin Fields is currently at 42% rostered right now. As we know, he did not look good at the beginning of the season. He looked actually really terrible. They haven't thrown a lot of balls with him. They didn't open up the offense. Again, I understand that the skepticism right now with the Justin Fields. Yeah. I definitely was as well. But I've really watched him the last few weeks. He's really starting to pick it up. He's making better decisions. He's not making the dumb decisions and throwing interceptions. The thing that I've been paying attention to is his fantasy finishes. He's been finishing in the last 4 weeks. He finished at a QB 13, 8, 5, and 5. That's consistency at the QB position, and you're finding that on the waiver wire currently. That is super hard to find, and obviously the biggest reason why he's currently averaging 69 yards on the ground. So
69.
That definitely over the last 4. So again, still, it's crazy. Having a quarterback that can get that great baseline, and then he's also making plays and hitting his wide receivers like Darnell Mooney for and scoring some touchdowns. So the other thing that really I think is a good play this week, but I think going forward would be his schedule is money.
Ridiculously easy.
Yeah, Miami, which their defense has not been good. They're a high-scoring offense. They're going to have to keep up. And then Detroit and Atlanta, which is like...
shootouts, baby.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, so I would really target Justin Fields, especially for the next 3 weeks if you're a QB streamer. And if you're not, if you have a Russell Wilson you're still hanging on or whatever else, honestly, he might be a consistent quarterback that has even a little bit higher ceiling.
I will say one thing. I'm skeptical, but the one thing that I like about Justin Fields is every week he has improved.
Yeah,
he's gotten better every week. He has more throws. He has more completions. He has a better pass rating. Every week he has shown improvement, which for me and a young quarterback, that's a huge thing.
Yep.
So I'm there. I think he has the pieces, but he's also kind of on a weird offense to put it together.
Yeah.
He has to figure it out, and he's really the linchpin for them.
But the best thing about him averaging 69 yards per game, he doesn't have to figure it out completely, and you still get a QB 12.
Yeah.
That's true. And also 69.
That's the best part.
I mean, that's really the best part about it. It's just the fact that it happened to be 69.
We can highlight that over and over again.
Oh, I'm going to. Ethan, I like yours because we've already talked about it a little bit, but I think that you have a lot to say about him.
Yeah, I think that Matt Rule was more Adam Gase than people realized. And because of that, P.J. Walker is really a great start, who has actually come out and really is kind of figuring out this new offense, has gotten comfortable with Terrence Marshall, looked comfortable with DJ Moore, made some big-time throws at the end of a game there.
You got to do the eyes when you talk about Adam Gase. You got to do the eyes.
But no, I mean, I do think there's a lot of truth to that this offense has really opened up and it's changed. They're giving these young guys a chance, and they feel revitalized. And momentum is nothing to just sneeze at over here. Carolina has something going on right now. I want to get my hands on some of those young pieces. I think P.J. Walker is going to end up being the leader of this team. He does also run the ball a decent amount every now and then. And so, not much, but 20, 30 yards a game, enough to get you a nice little baseline. And then he's played really well throwing the ball. So, definitely like to start P.J. Walker against the Bengals this week. It could be someone that you could be looking to start in the future as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. He looked really good, and that bomb touchdown, man. He threw that that was the biggest air yard throw of the season, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Pat Mahomes tweeted and said that was the best throw of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something coming from Pat Mahomes. People in his third season, people are saying this guy's a Hall of Famer, and he's throwing the props out to P.J. Walker. I really think there's a little bit something freeing about getting rid of everything and saying, hey, we're scrapping and we're starting fresh, and we're really going to work, and we really have nowhere but to go up. And I think this is the perfect system for P.J. Walker to come in. He's coming out of the XFL. He's got a lot to prove, which might open up a whole other floodgate of these XFL players. It's a whole other issue. But he's got a lot to prove, and this is the perfect system for him to do it in because they're already at the ground. So.
Well, and all these guys in Carolina feel like they have a chance again. I think what happens when you do the coaching reset, because we see this happen a lot, is that all these guys on the roster that weren't getting shots before, that were buried behind somebody else who was the guy and super talented or whatever else, like Chuba Hubbard and Donta Foreman and P.J. Walker and Terrence Marshall. These guys look at it and go like, oh, this is my opportunity to make or break my career right here. I can go out and show what I have. And when you all do that together in the same moment as a team, it builds something, and that's. I'm not saying the Carolina Panthers are going to go on and sweep everybody and go to the playoffs, But I do think that if they win a few games here and there throughout the rest of the season, some of these guys can really prove that they can make a career for themselves in the NFL and change their lives, and that's something that you can bet on when guys are incentivized like that. They do well.
Their division's rough, so if anybody has a chance with sweeping some games, I really think that they got it. I hope that they do because everybody loves an underdog story.
It'd be amazing. And PJ Walker is a great story too. Part of it is that I do root for him from the XFL.
You can't but not.
Seems like a great guy, and what a great story. So,
ready for tight ends?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna go first because I gotta say, like, this is my not a QB or not a wide or can't get it right, not a tight end streamer. This is somebody who should be in your roster, and the simple reason why is he's ranked number 8 at his position. He's ranked above David Njoku, Freiermuth, Garrett Everett, Hayden Hurst, guys who are owned pretty much in 70+% of leagues, and that's Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin is an undernamed guy who nobody really gives a lot of time of day to. He's owned in 15% of leagues. He's ranked number 8. Like, can you think of a wide receiver number 8 who would be available in 15% of leagues? You would go and snatch him up immediately, and especially at a position like tight end, where if you don't have one of the top 5 guys, you're really struggling from week to week. There's no reason that Tyler Conklin should be owned in 15% of leagues. So if you are really hurting on tight end, maybe you drafted Albert O and you've really been struggling to go ahead and find somebody. Maybe you picked up Noah Fant, Will Dissly, a lot of guys who just aren't performing to their potential. I think Tyler Conklin's a guy that you could put in and he can consistently get you what you need every week out of tight end. If you don't have him, you should go get him.
Sure. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, the Jets are going to have to throw the ball more and more.
They're going to have to.
Because they don't really have that run game the way they did with Brees. So,
I was going to say that's the caveat, because he had a really good stretch with Joe Flacco where he's targeted a lot and he did really well. And then he had a little bit of stretch in sort of every Jets wide receiver or anybody that's catching the ball, because they just ran the ball so much that he didn't have a lot of targets and a lot of production. Yeah. But this last week he really came back on, and because they had to throw more, he had a great week. So
he had 2 touchdowns. He's had not very many through the rest of the year, so he's definitely becoming a red zone threat. It's just, this guy, there's no reason. He's a good physical athlete. He's young. He still has plenty of time, but he also has a little bit of experience where he's been playing for a few years. So.
He has 5 games with 6 or more targets throughout the season.
He does.
For a tight end, that's a lot. 6 targets in a game is a lot for a tight end. 5 games with that is big. He also had, as Eli mentioned, some of those Zach Wilson games.
Yeah, and that's not his fault. It's just Zach Wilson. Sometimes Zach Wilson, when they had Breece Hall, especially, and I think that we talked about that's going to change. But when they had Breece Hall, they would just run the ball and run the ball and run the ball and dump it off to Breece. And then play defense is what they would do. So
there's a great strategy when Breece Hall is healthy.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
He's not healthy.
It was working pretty good.
I completely agree.
And they have so many assets on their team. There's no reason. We could talk about the Jets all day, but it's definitely somebody who I would roster.
Even when they win, the Jets are still crappy. It's just amazing.
It's Zach Wilson.
It's always something.
It's just amazing.
It's always something.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'll jump into mine because I think Ethan's is actually the best pickup of the week by far. It's depending on injury, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want to shout out Greg Dulcich?
I don't know.
Yeah,
we should probably look it up.
He's 42% owned currently right now, but he definitely needs to be picked up and probably started. So he has played. He's played for the Denver Broncos as tight end. He's played in 88% of snaps this last week, and he's put together a couple of great weeks here. So he had 3 catches over 40 yards in 3 games. So over the last 3 games, he's had at least 3 catches and at least 40 yards. And he's had other big explosive games after that. So he's been more consistent. Russell Wilson's looking for him. He's an explosive. He's actually a rookie, so he's actually typically rookies. We talked about this before. Do not really come on tight end until 2 to 3 years in, typically before they have some good games. But he's putting together a really good stretch here, so I think take advantage of it. I know it's gross because Russell Wilson's running the ball, but if he's putting the production out there, it's working out. So
let's not touch the Russell Wilson thing. Let's just
Well, and he's been a good security blanket for Russell the last couple weeks, which is something that Russell has really needed because when you do have struggles as a QB, You need someone that's big and has big, easy target with soft hands.
Yeah,
and Dolchich is...
When you can't go through progressions like a normal QB.
Russell Wilson he does like tight ends. I mean,
like
when he was in Seattle, Jimmy Graham had great seasons. Will Dissly until both seasons when he was injured. Great seasons. I mean, Russell Wilson does like to throw to the tight end.
Yeah,
so.
Greg Olson for a while too.
Yeah. So
he's true. He's always supported.
He does. He likes his tight ends. It's a good position.
That's a really good point, actually. So he can do something positive.
Maybe we'll see. Still gotta prove it.
But yeah, I would say Ethan's probably the best pickup of the week.
I agree.
And I would be wondering what you're going to spend on him.
Yeah. This is a good one as far as what you do for Fab. But Isaiah Likely is owned in 9% of leagues. Mark Andrews is at best questionable to be in this game and will probably be on a snap count, and at worst will not even be in the game at all.
Just keep him out if you can't play. Can I just say that out there?
Is it the only other than Duvernay?
Like,
the only receiver on their team that can. So they're either going to run the ball, and Lamar's going to carry the team, or they're going to throw the ball. They got to do something.
Can they not try to run before the game to see if they can actually make it instead of just getting the first play and they get injured?
They want the other team to have to game plan for him. So I do think that there's a part of that where Mark Andrews is being sold as that he's going to be in.
I'm not a Baltimore fan. I don't give a crap.
Anyway.
Sorry.
But Isaiah Likely is very likely to have a much significant increase in his snap count this week. He is a very athletic and small for a tight end as far as just weight, like height. He's rather large, 6'4", but he's
thin.
He's kind of a leaner tight end who is very explosive and very fast. And their offensive coordinator, I forget his name, but was just asked, what he thinks about Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, and he goes, we count them as wide receivers when they're on the field. And that's really kind of the way this offense is run, and it does that for a reason. Likely is you get to slot him in at your tight end, but he's going to play the wide receiver position with Rashad Bateman out, with Mark Andrews either on a snap count probably or completely out. And so go pick him up. I would not hesitate to spend 5 to 7% of Fab to go get a guy who, if the Mark Andrews injuries continue, could really become a huge part of this offense.
Mark Andrews is getting up there. I mean, not necessarily for tight ends, but he is getting a little older. He's 29, 30?
I think he's only 27.
No, I don't think so.
While you look that up, I think he's a great pickup. So my question to you would spend 7-8% Fab.
5 to 7.
5 to 7. So
you're right.
The bigger thing that is for the Mark Andrews owner, because really, if you think about it, the Mark Andrews owner is going to be tight endless, and they're going to want the backup. So I feel like whoever that is going to bid that up to an
the reason why I wouldn't too much overspend on Isaiah Likely is because if Mark Andrews is back next week, which very well could happen, all of a sudden it's like he becomes,
he could be more involved though. Just even if Mark Andrews out there, if Bateman's out, that's part of it. But no, if I'm the Mark Andrews owner, here's what I would definitely go strong at Likely, just for the fact it's a Monday night game. You don't know if he's going to play or not, and then you have a fallback option if he doesn't play right on that same game, and you have a lot of production coming out of him.
But isn't 5 to 7% on a tight end pretty strong?
I would say
I thought I was coming pretty high.
I feel like 10 to 15 is
15%. I would probably go for.
Well, you guys are gonna outbid me then.
What if Mark Andrews all of a sudden comes out? He's out for 3 to 4 weeks. Now you have a replacement level player.
Or they throw him in. They throw him in, and it gets.
Or you spend 5% or 15% of your Fab, and then all of a sudden you have a player that you can't start.
Well, here's the thing, man. This is also like critical playoff time. Like these games are starting to build for the playoff run, and if you're not winning these games in the next few weeks, so for me, I would almost rather spend more as insurance right now, especially if my team is really good and I have Mark Andrews and he's a key player in my offense. I want to spend more on him so I can secure these wins now before more things start to happen, All
right, fair enough.
So that's just my opinion.
But I would definitely, he's a top pickup by far in tight end, and I think that's 100%. A great call. And I honestly, I have Mark Andrews in a few leagues, and I'm going to go pretty hard at him. So in the leagues I have him in. Real quick before we move on, because I know the next section we really want to talk about all the trade action, all the news. But for go up to a little bit to the wide receivers and running backs. Is there anybody that you would spend a lot of Fab on? I don't have to go individual players anybody that you spend more than 5 to 10% on any of the players that we talked about in running backs?
Yes.
Or is this more of a stash and wait type of?
I would
just
say
just so we can put it out there. I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
If Khalil Herbert
yes
is available,
what are you spending on Khalil Herbert? If he's
as
available?
much as I can.
Yes,
as
I think so
much
too.
as I can.
Yeah, try
25%, which is a lot.
25%. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do for sure.
And Foreman to probably 20%, probably Foreman 15 to 20.
Yeah, 15-20 is what I'd say
Yeah.
for
I
Foreman.
would also, I know this is weird, but I would also go more on Jalen Warren, especially if I'm a Najee Harris owner, because the situation with Najee is just getting worse.
Nasty.
And there's
It's
nothing,
nasty.
there's no relief, nobody's saying anything about it, and the fact that Warren is all of a sudden starting to picking up all these snaps and all this stuff is happening.
I completely agree. He might, not a lot of people, unless you're listening to the podcast, but not a lot of people might go after him because I think he might be on bye. I think. Yes, he is on. They're on bye. So that'd be a sneaky one to pick up. Maybe put a few percentage in. But
and because he's on bye, I would only put a few percentage in.
If you can afford the bench spots.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. Yeah. And Rashad White's another one to me. That
5 to 10.
Yeah, I would not hesitate to go.
Yeah, I would pour
upwards of
10 maybe.
Yeah, 8 to 12 maybe. Yeah, somewhere in there. Nothing too crazy, but at the same time, if Fournette gets hurt, all of a sudden you might win your league by just owning Rashad White.
Yes. Those are the ones I definitely spend more up on. The other ones, again, great fill-ins, great handcuffs, put low bids on them and see what happens.
I will throw this out there for wide receiver for Garrett Wilson. If Garrett Wilson is available in my league, which, 50% of leagues he's available, so there's a 50% chance of this. Yeah. I will spend a good bit on Garrett Wilson because he is such a high value target. Yeah. If he becomes, if Zach Wilson figures his crap out,
that's true.
Joe Flacco comes back, whatever. Garrett Wilson automatically.
Truth be told, even if Zach Wilson doesn't figure his throwing out and just starts hyper targeting Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson will look better, and Garrett Wilson will all of a sudden become what you've seen him be in these weeks where he is hyper targeted.
And you might have been a fool earlier to have been like, yeah, whatever, it's not gonna. Maybe it panned out, and Garrett Wilson didn't necessarily do what you wanted to do. This is your second chance to get him, because I think this is one of those dudes that if you didn't get him earlier, you definitely want to try to get him now because he has such high potential.
So what are you thinking? 10 because 10% is a lot for typical wide. 10, 15%.
I would say 10 to 15% if he's available in my league. And that's me.
Especially this time of year, because Fab's getting more valuable, too.
This is a playoff run right now.
Yeah, it depends on what you have and what you need as well. If you don't need wide receivers or whatever, same with running backs, right? It's kind of all situational. But I don't think it's unreasonable.
The other ones that I would spend at least a decent amount on are Duvernay, just for the replacement value of Bateman, Palmer, just replacement value of Mike Evans and the targets he's getting, and then Darnell Mooney. Even though I think it is low volume offense, he is the favorite target and the person they traded for, which we're going to talk about here in a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
It still needs to be acclimated into the offense.
Agreed.
Kadarius Toney's available in your league. How much you going in?
Dude, with that offense, I'm a little hesitant.
Yeah, I've got to hear what Eli says. Hold on.
Hang on.
Well, I actually went and picked him up right away.
I know you did in every league. I was looking for him as well.
Yeah,
besides
once.
Yeah. But I obviously, if everybody doesn't know, huge Tony truther this year, which has not turned up.
It might end up being the best
thing
ever now.
With Tony, I wouldn't have broke the bank with him if I couldn't got him for free. I probably would have done 10% fab to be reasonable with it. Because he still has to overcome. There's a lot of targets out there that are currently already being beaten up by Juju.
Field.
Yeah, MVS and Travis.
I completely disagree.
Really?
I was not a Kadarius Toney believer because I didn't care for his situation. I knew that he was kind of in the doghouse with the coaching staff, and it wasn't an offense that was very high-powered, and he was injured. He goes to the Chiefs. They spent a third-round pick on him.
He said he wasn't injured.
Yeah. He's not in the doghouse with this coaching staff, who's notorious for working hard to work with wide receivers, by the way. Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, were pains in the
what.
Josh Gordon they brought on. Yeah. And MVS has been completely terrible and inefficient. Mecole Hardman keeps getting pushed off his spot and beaten up at the line. And Juju's been okay. Sky Moore has looked terrible.
Yeah.
If Kadarius Toney is available in any of my leagues, I was very disappointed that you had him, and we should maybe talk trade. If you're a little lower on him, I'll take him from you.
I want to see what happens.
20 to 25% is what I would spend on Kadarius Toney.
Okay.
they went after him for a reason. This offense needed help, and they are going to use him.
I hope so.
And this is...
Oh, they're going. I'm not doubting that. Yeah, no.
I would be all in on Kadarius Toney. He will win you your league.
Every time he catches the ball, he makes 3 people miss. It's a guarantee he makes 3 people miss every time he catches the ball.
He will be everything I hoped Mecole Hardman would be at the beginning of the season.
So you're off the Mecole Hardman train.
Mecole Hardman is killed by this train.
Okay.
It's done.
Okay.
He's dead to me. Say it out loud. Dead, and I love Mecole Hardman.
So Tony will probably is a smaller wide receiver.
He'll fill that Mecole.
He'll fill the Mecole. MVS will probably still have his position. Juju will probably still... Juju might be put to the outside, maybe. And Tony...
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but...
Andy Reid's got something cooked up.
Yeah, this didn't happen for no reason. And
it also helps that he's now getting thrown to by Pat Mahomes,
yes.
who is one of the most accurate and...
My only concern, though, is the same thing that we've dealt with all year, is it's 1 week, one wide receiver, 1 week, the next wide receiver... You know what I mean? So
he's going to spread the ball.
He's by far the most talented wide receiver on that roster. As much of a pain in the butt as he is.
Man, you've been like all over the Chief rosters, and you were the receivers, and you're quick to just be like, yeah, whatever, guys, get off here. I don't want to play with you anymore.
Better than all. I was all over them because of their situation.
Okay.
Not because of their talent. Now you have talent plus situation.
The only one that's been consistent outside of Travis is Juju, and he's consistently
inconsistent, maybe.
Consistently as far as targets are concerned.
He has gotten at least 6 targets pretty much every game.
But yes. What he does with them is a different story.
Yes.
So at this point, we have gone over our waiver wire pickups. We've gone over our streamers. I think now we should talk about the big thing of this week. We're not going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I think we will get all of that. We're going to talk about trades. We have a few things to throw in there otherwise. Packers. But we are going to talk about the trades and the significance that they're going to have on fantasy. Without further ado, I think what we should do is we should do one from each one, just rotating, so that way we can, so I think Eli should go first.
Yeah, first off, just want to talk about the trade deadline. Crazy. I feel like it's been more trades this year than like any other year. It's just been insane.
Well,
the week before, and then the week
big ones.
They've been big ones. Big ones impacting teams, but not only teams, but really what we care about, fantasy football there too. So
and you see the teams that are really going for it all this year are really loading up, and you see the teams that have struggled going, you know what? Fine, we're going to go full-blown. Let's do the rebuild.
And assets, at least, for the players that year.
There's also a lot of teams that have capital, and they have picks, and they're just not... So it's kind of weird that there were some teams that just didn't really do anything. I was kind of surprised to see the Dolphins on there. I think they're really loading up for a playoff run.
Yeah.
And they're really, really hoping to get that playoff run. The Chiefs is a big one. They're trying to get back because they've fallen out of grace in the last few years. So I think I would argue that probably in the last 5 years, this is probably one of the biggest trade deadlines that we've seen. I mean,
it's picked up over the last few years too.
It has.
Like in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been more trades, and typically, like before 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 1, maybe 2 trades.
Maybe a couple.
This is like over 8 to 10 trades.
My personal theory on this too is that it has a little bit to do with the new cap structure, where you can front load contracts. So if teams have salary cap right now available, right, still in this year, and they're going to make that run, they can trade for these big players, pay out their bonuses this year, and write them into this year. Right, to eat up all that extra cap space, and then save themselves in the long run.
Free it up next year.
Free it up for next year, and so on and so forth. So I do think a part of it has to do with that, and what the Rams really did to win their Super Bowl was really taking advantage of that, front loading absolutely everything, right, in order to eat some cap and then go and sign these people to these really long backloaded contracts to have kind of a super team. And I think that more and more GMs saw that work. And
for 1 year.
It worked for 1 year. It's a struggle now.
1 year. They got a pretty big hangover.
The teams that really think that they have a chance are kind of doing that. They're going out and they're going to load up, which is really fun to watch as fans. And I think this is a great metaphor if you're in dynasty leagues as well.
Yes.
Take this advice from the GMs of the NFL. These people do this for a living. They're very smart.
Yeah.
Not as smart as me. They don't run a team as well as I do.
Exactly. Absolutely. But they're doing this for a reason. So if your team is not going to make the playoffs, start trading some assets. To somebody who really wants to make that run.
Keeper leagues and dynasty
Well,
leagues. Start looking
you-
out.
Yes.
You did that.
Yes.
I mean, you sold essentially everything that you had except for some of your younger guys who were going to pan out. And albeit it necessarily didn't work out as much this year as you were hoping it would due to some injuries. But your team is a lock for the playoffs in our Dynasty League, essentially for the next 3 to 5 years. Because you have all these super, super young, talented players who are going to be around for a while.
Yeah,
So-
and that's the thing is that you get to a point where you just, if you have enough picks, you can't miss. Like I had 6 first-round picks last year, and I'll have 3 next year, as well as 2 second-round picks in each of those drafts. And so, in my Dynasty League, and so when you do something like that, it's like, look, no matter how bad of a drafting GM I am, at some point I'm going to get some of these right, and going to end up with some great players in my roster.
Monkeys on typewriters will type Shakespeare eventually.
Exactly. So that was my philosophy: is take a lot of swings.
Sounds good.
But it worked, so. Without further ado,
Yeah.
hopping right into it.
I think one of the biggest trades that I'll talk about first is Bradley Chubb getting sent over to Miami. We just talked about.
You say that like it's a punishment.
It is a punishment. Bronco
I
fans
don't
here, we
think so.
talked about it before. But, you know, Miami gets a big boost. Their defense was struggling a little bit. They have a pretty powerful offense with wide receivers and weapons that Tua has. So they traded Bradley Chubb in a 5th, and they gave away to the Broncos Chase Edmonds in a 2023 first and a 2024 fourth. So Broncos did get some good compensation and got a running back that is a decent running back. I think for fantasy implications, Chase Edmonds will take a little bit of time to acclimate, in my opinion, for maybe a couple weeks. But he should have I think it's still going to be a rotation, but he should jump to at least a 50% timeshare.
Well,
I think pretty close.
They said today that Melvin Gordon is still their guy. So
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens. As far as the
He
trade
wasn't even their
conversation-
guy when they were saying he was their guy. That's kind of the hard part to
He's
believe about that too, though.
Throwing some temper tantrums, and he was in the doghouse for a little bit. So
Yeah,
some other
we'll
stuff
see.
going on.
For fantasy, I think that's the biggest thing is the impact of the Broncos. As far as the actual Broncos, I think this is a terrible trade for the Broncos, but we don't have to get too far into that.
But you guys do get your run game back, in a way. You guys
a little help
lost
in the run
Javonte
game.
Williams. And that's a huge
Yeah.
cut to your offense. But at least getting Chase Edmonds, who does have some production, he kind of got lost in the Miami backfield. It's still something that might set your run game back on
He
track.
got beat up by a 28-year-old running back that just
29.
came out just
ACL.
got ACL
Yes.
surgery last year. I mean, I can't get too excited about.
It's Raheem Mostert,
We
though.
got a
okay?
first-round draft pick in next season. What we
Yes.
gave away for Russell Wilson, we get at least some of that back.
Well, you got
The Bradley Chubb trade.
you got what you spent on Bradley Chubb to begin with, so you definitely already.
But-
netted
Well, this will be a much
but you
later
don't.
pick.
But
probably.
again, you don't. Even the first round picks, they never know what you're going to get, and you already have an asset it's a proven asset, one of the top DNs in the league.
That you can't afford to pay.
The
Can't
reason,
afford to pay him, yeah.
Exactly, we can't afford to pay him because we're paying Mr. High Knees in the middle of the aisle.
Mr. Unlimited.
Mr. Limited.
He's limiting.
Cap
He's
salary.
limiting our team.
Yeah, your cap space is not
He's-
unlimited. though.
yeah, no doubt. I'm gonna limit him.
Yeah, we could talk about it.
So
more.
fantasy impact again. I would say very minor until probably impacting a couple weeks down the road where Chase gets a little bit more involved. I feel like there won't be a lot of impact initially. You guys feel any different?
No, I agree with you.
Completely agree. 2 to 3 week wait to see
And
if this is even going to be
and Chase
anything.
Edmonds is out on the free agency, so if you have him, you're just holding him and seeing what happens. So
Yeah, or if you have a Broncos fan in your league that you think might bite, I mean, you can try and sell them high and see if someone gets hyped.
just based off the hype. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with that. For me, I think all of mine are big, but Hawk to the Vikings they got T.J. Hawkinson, a 2023 4th round pick, and a conditional 4th round 2024 pick, in which Detroit gained a 2023 2nd round pick and a 2024 3rd round pick. I personally believe that the Vikings, I think you and I were talking about this earlier, I think the Vikings made out like bandits on this one. They got a guy who was a 1st round draft pick tight end. He's already shown that he's got the propensity when he gets high volume that he can handle it. He's a red zone threat. He's got, big bodied guy, very physical, great blocker. He fills everything that you're looking for in a tight end. He just unfortunately was on the Lions.
Yeah.
And we didn't mention this, a lot, but Irv Smith just went to the IR. He's on there for 8 to 10.
8 to 10 weeks. It just came out. They were kind of didn't give the timeline
Pretty
right away,
tight-lipped.
but yeah, they just came out right after this trade, which makes sense. 8 to 10 weeks he's going to be out. So.
Huge asset. Definitely frees up and huge fantasy impact for Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson because now you have this tight end who is a massive threat as a receiver. They definitely have to figure out how to cover more. I think this is a huge asset for the Vikings. It definitely solidifies their offense. I hope you guys agree with me because I think it's pretty obvious from that.
No, I think Hawkinson is in a great spot, and I think that the Vikings definitely won this trade, although I do kind of understand it from Detroit's perspective in that they have Jelani Woods and some other good tight end pieces as well over there, and so, I mean, they have good players to back it up that obviously they feel confident in, otherwise they wouldn't have done this.
Yep.
Because they didn't get a whole lot back.
Well, they're good at turning those mid-round draft picks, or those 2 and 3, into something big, so they might be able to do something with it. And Dan Campbell's really looking to rebuild, or at least complete his team, and figure out what the hell is going on with them.
Yeah, I think for TJ Hawkinson for a fantasy impact, the trade for the Vikings I think makes complete sense. You're 6-1. Your tight end, your young tight end just got injured, who you thought would be a good offensive weapon. So you wanted to replace that tight end, and TJ has a lot of explosiveness. We've shown that this year already. For fantasy impact, I think TJ. I actually think this might be just a little bit of a downgrade as far as fantasy impact. You didn't have a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit with
Amon-Ra
being hurt. Besides Amon-Ra, who else do they have? They have Josh Reynolds or
DJ Chark,
who's been injured.
DeAndre Swift has been hurt.
Swift has been hurt. So now you go to an offense that's dominated targets by Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. You will get the third targets, maybe fourth behind Dalvin Cook and the running backs. But I think you'll have more red zone opportunities, which that can definitely the touchdowns can be there, which can save you, but the volume is going to be less.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say I would rather have Kirk Cousins throwing to me than Jared Goff. So 100%. I think that simply from the fact that he now has Kirk Cousins, who it's a make or break point in his career. He has to do something, or he's going to forever be the standard by which we grade mediocre quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So I think just that.
I just don't think he's going to has the potential with this trade to be a top 6 tight end. I think he's going to be more of a
mid-round.
Yeah.
Mid
7, 8.
I don't know. That Vikings offense is pretty good. He could end up, to me, getting a lot of touchdowns out of this deal.
It could be like Kyle Rudolph from a few years back, where he got a bunch of touchdowns, but again, you don't know when the touchdowns are coming. Touchdowns are the most unpredictable stat you can have.
Sure. So, he's definitely going to be volatile. Best case scenario, he's going to be more volatile.
So he's not the consistent target wide receiver with the touchdown upside. He's more just a low-end tight end with a little bit more touchdown upside. So I'm not saying he's a bad player. You're just not going to have a 45-point week that he had at Detroit. Exactly. So that part of his upside is gone, is what I'm trying to say.
But
that's fair.
I will say one thing. These Vikings fans are rabid. They love the Vikings, and they love to have Vikings players on their team. You can definitely sell him at this point for,
if you want,
I would say something, they're probably pretty hot on this guy.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a pretty good sell with the fact that he's moving over there. I think you'd be able to move him for a lot more than he's worth.
Yeah.
And so in some of the leagues that I'm in, I'm definitely going to try to do that. I still like Hawkinson. I just think that I can get more in the long run for him.
Yeah, and the Vikings have been good, so Vikings fans should be fully on that hype train. And
they're all on it. They're all on it. Ethan,
this is a big
what is your big trade? Whichever one.
Yeah, so this is going to be... let's talk a little bit about Chase Claypool. We mentioned before that this is something that is going to really open things up for Justin Fields, we think.
Yeah.
I think it's really going to help Darnell Mooney as well. And I do think it will make them throw the ball a little bit more now that they have some different options in the passing game. And the other thing that I think we didn't touch on earlier that's worth noting is that when you look at the Bears right now, they're actually building something that does seem to make a lot of sense to me. And you have a big, deep threat wide receiver. You've got a small, deep threat wide receiver. You've got a quarterback with a massive arm who is athletic as all get out, who can buy time. I mean, this is really the recipe to make, like Russell Wilson before he went to Denver, was really kind of the idea of what they put together, right?
Yeah,
Not only that, but if you have these deep play wide receivers and they do these go routes, and they can open up the field for him to be able to run the ball too. So
yes, and that run game that's already been good will get even better because you have to respect the play action on both sides of the field. I think this really helps the Bears just overall. I think that Claypool is an asset to pick up as well if he is available as far as trading for him in your league.
Yeah, as I say, he's probably rostered high 70s, but yeah, if he's available to trade, you'll see what the owner thinks.
Because the owner's probably looking to get rid of him right now, going Claypool has been bad this entire season.
I actually traded for him a week ago.
He's actually only 58%. Yeah. So the only thing that I agree with your assessment. I think this is a bigger win for Justin Fields.
Yes.
And the actual Bears team than it is maybe for Claypool's value. Well, actually, he was a wide receiver 3 in Steelers, so I think it's actually more of a wash. I don't know. Just depending on the volume. If the volume of passes do go up, then I could see it becoming more of a value. But right now, like I talked about with Darnell Mooney, with just having such a small pie, it's just hard. You got to hit on these big plays, and it's got to be successful that way.
But like you said, it might force him to open.
There should be a bigger pie. My theory is that there should be a bigger pie after this.
Yep.
But we'll see when that ends up happening, and that's that depends.
I would just like to say this one thing. This is not like anything serious. I think it's messed up that they had Chase Claypool draft George Pickens or announce the pick. And then got rid of him.
Yeah.
That's pretty messed up, Mike Tomlin. Why would you're cold-blooded?
Yeah, it's rather harsh.
That is rather harsh.
I also saw that
doesn't care.
Somebody did an RIP to the TikTok for the Steelers.
Yeah, another Juju
and Chase Claypool. The one thing about Claypool, he's very talented, very athletic, all that stuff, but sometimes not the smartest player on the field.
He does have, but
just based off his play alone, there's a couple plays where he
does have a good attitude, though. In his last few weeks, you've seen him in the post-game interviews. He's got a good attitude. He's a young guy. He's really trying to make his mark on the NFL, and he said going into the season, I think I'm top 3 wide receiver. I don't think that's anywhere near that. However...
You were barely top 3 wide receiver on the team there.
Yeah. Even in college, you were barely top. But, I mean, going into... He is now in a place where he's not... He has the potential to be the guy on that team. Yeah, and he can finally prove or make or break that claim, and he's got all the potential in the world. So I hope he does it, but I'm skeptical.
Definitely would want him on my team to see what happens. He does have the potential. If the volume does go up, then he can be a really good asset. For me, seeing the tracker for 8 weeks, it's hard to believe that it's going to boost up.
And when you make a catch during a 2-minute drill, you want to hand the ball to the ref and not just spike it on the ground.
And not dance.
And dance for a little bit there.
Usually a good
inexperience.
Good strategy.
I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to tell me how sweet this feels, okay? So, Darius Toney, Kansas City. Giants, in return, get a 3rd-round, terrible, compensatory pick, and a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, so he was a 1st-round pick. What pick was he drafted at, Tony?
I'm going to say like 28.
20, yeah, it's a 20.
Upper 20s.
Yeah. So you traded away a 28th overall pick for a 3rd round and a 6th round pick just because you can't get.
They weren't using them though. They were not using them. So in anything that they could use, obviously the coaching staff.
I would pay good money to see that tape and those text messages and be a fly on the wall between him and the coaching staff.
He's definitely a different cat. I don't know if you've seen any of his interviews. He's definitely a.
Well, he was tweeting and he was like, everybody says I'm injured, but people who aren't know or who aren't important don't know. It's like, bro, you're definitely injured. You weren't.
What's that gif where there's somebody in a wheelchair and he lifts up the blanket? And
it's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Tony's just going to the Chiefs. Ready to go. So we already talked about this a little bit. Obviously, super excited. I think Ethan mentioned he's super excited. You are.
I'm excited about it.
You want to see what happens. But I think the potential is at least there. First off, he's going to get on the field. Thank God, with everything else that's going on the Giants. He gives them a chance, right? Like, the talent's there. We saw him on the field. He can make people miss. Like, honestly, nobody I've ever seen. Or close to, I think, Tyreek Hill. There's some people come to mind, but he's in the top tier of just making people miss after the catch, which is huge. He's an athlete. With this potential, I think, for fantasy, we already talked about stash him, see what happens, but if he hits, he's going to hit big.
I love Kadarius Toney, which it kills me because he just didn't play. And so, like, there's obviously something weird going on. My question is how soon do you think Andy Reid will integrate him into the offense?
Yeah.
And how soon will he play? And in turn, when do you think he'll begin getting a significant amount of snaps?
Where
I
do
think
you
it's going
think
to take a few
start
weeks.
him? Yeah.
I disagree. This week.
Really? I think it might take a week or two.
Like, I think that he'll
I agree
play...
with Dakota. Probably 2 weeks.
I think he'll play 40% of the snaps, if I had to guess, this week.
I'll give him 30s,
and
high
then
30s for the next 2 weeks.
And then the week after that, I bet he's 60,
so
80.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. But, I mean, I think if he's playing 40% of the snaps,
Wait,
you
so
start
a question for you. If you had him, would you start him in your flex
Yeah.
immediately?
Yep.
Really?
Oh.
I don't know if I would do that.
I mean,
I'm too scared to do that. I actually
Yeah.
have him.
There's 2 words I'm going to give you about Kadarius Toney, and I'll say it now, and I'm going out on a limb here, but league winner.
Wow.
This is a league.
I thought I was a Kadarius Toney guy. What's going on here? Like,
I'm a Kansas
He
City.
just likes Chiefs receivers.
It's
That's all it
Andy
is.
Reid and Pat Mahomes. You take a talented wide receiver with that much
He
talent,
does.
Well,
and you put him in the mind of Andy Reid, and Andy Reid gets to use him as a weapon. And then who's throwing to him? Is that future Hall of Fame quarterback? Even was only 3 years in the league, Pat Mahomes.
Okay, all right, listen.
Like, come on, man! This is the perfect line of things that you look for.
Don't make
Talent.
Hey, Tony, wrap up your
Situation.
hamstring like 3 times.
Yeah.
Like, wear some extra pads.
Hopefully they don't make you play running back. Hopefully they actually put you in as wide receiver. I just want to go ahead and throw this out there just because I have to.
Yeah.
What happened to Juju Smith, man? You were saying Juju Smith
Last
was
week he
gonna
had a
be
huge
big
game,
dude,
actually.
big
He
dog.
did. He had a great game,
He did.
and he'll be fine. He'll do okay. But here's the truth: is that Juju Smith-Schuster, I liked him a lot because of the situation,
Yeah.
Okay.
and he's a
That's
solid talent in an
That's fair.
amazing situation. Kadarius Toney is an amazing talent in an amazing situation, and that's how you win at fantasy football.
Obviously, Andy Reid and the GM staff with the Kansas City Chiefs saw something in Toney, and they went after a player that the Giants, for some God knows who reason why, decided that they were going to take a chance on this dude. So I really hope he pans out.
Yeah.
I really do.
Juju the last 2 weeks has had some good games.
good.
20,
Pretty
25 points, 28 points last 2
Took
weeks.
him a little while to get adjusted.
Yeah.
Took
And
him a while.
I was talking about this Juju. We don't get stuck on Juju, but he's been like, not that great games, but he's been close to like 9-10 points almost every week, somewhere in there.
He's been
but
consistent.
He's not what I hoped going into the season.
He's no Cooper Kupp.
No.
But I do think he's a solid talent in an amazing situation. Unfortunately, Juju's situation gets a little bit worse, I think, with Toney because there are a decent amount of mouths to feed over there. And I think with Travis Kelce, and I think Toney will be the number 2 target in Kansas City after this.
You better hope he gets along with everybody on that team.
He's not going to get along with anybody, but it's not going to matter. They're going to be
His ass,
friends.
man.
They're going to be friends in the field, and that's
Travis
all that
Kelce's
matters.
going to be beating him up after practice.
Kelsey and Mahomes are like the
Hey, by the
calmest
way,
people. They're the cool. Like
they are really cool. They have a new podcast. I've never seen it, but
I've
shout
not,
out to
but I-
them. They have it's great.
Is it?
It's
It's-
great.
I have to
They
go
talk
watch it.
about
Yeah.
he's talking about him getting tackled by Derwin James that one game during this year where he got like pile drive.
Oh.
Travis Etienne, he ranked tight end. Really good podcast. Just shout out to the Kelseys. They're really great. So
Oh, yeah.
but
We ready?
yeah, I think
Okay.
we covered that one as well as we could.
Mine is a dynasty. I have to say this up front. Dynasty. If Calvin Ridley is available in your league, do not pick him up. And you are a redraft league. Just don't pick him up. He's not going to play this
Not
year.
gonna help him much.
If you are a dynasty manager and you do not have Calvin Ridley and he's available in your league, I highly suggest going and picking him up if he is not already rostered. He probably is. But Calvin Ridley to the Jags. Jags get a conditional 2nd round pick in the 2024 draft and a conditional 5th round pick in the 2023 draft, which arguably isn't the best. Like, they're getting a little bit, but man, Calvin Ridley is just an outstanding wide receiver talent.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he had some problems going into last year. He had some personal issues, which turned into some sort of gambling bust where they benched him for a year and then they were like, look, man, you ain't playing. He's eligible to return in 2023. He's going to the Jags, whose lead wide receiver is Christian Kirk. I know we were a little skeptical on Christian Kirk this year. He panned out really well. I think Trevor Lawrence really has to kind of do what we've been talking about Justin Fields doing, and he has to throw the ball because all this hype on Trevor Lawrence didn't necessarily pan out as well. Calvin Ridley makes things happen, though. He makes quarterbacks look good.
Yeah.
I think this is a massive, massive asset to the Jags. I think with going to a quarterback that's going to have to throw more and has already proven that he's taken a mid-tier wide receiver and turned him into a top 10 wide receiver. I think he's top 10. We'd have to look, but anyways.
But yeah, he's turned out pretty well. The last few weeks, it's been pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, but he had a good start to the season.
Yes, he did.
I think this is a great pickup for the Jags.
Yeah.
I think this is somebody who they desperately need. I wish they were getting him this year. And if Calvin Ridley's available, I think you're going to see him just absolutely blow up when he plays next year.
And if you're in a rebuild, Calvin Ridley's a great target in Dynasty as well.
They can't use him this year. So.
You probably get him for pretty cheap. There might be some guy who has him on the bench, and he really is looking to secure that roster spot.
It's a gamble because, like you said, mental health. Like if hopefully he's good to go and he's ready to roll. If he is, he's going to be a top tier player.
He said he wants to play.
If he wants to play, he wants to play.
He said he wants to play.
But what I'm saying is, because of that extra question mark, you can get him for cheaper.
Yeah,
there's more skeptical.
I would trade for him in a dynasty league. I think that he's somebody.
I probably would too, depending on what I have to give up for him. But yeah, he'd definitely be a good trade target.
Late first round draft pick, early second round draft pick. What do you guys say?
I'd give a first round draft pick for him.
Yeah, I think late first, early second. I'm kind of right in that.
You gotta know where you're picking, but yeah, if you're later, then that'd be fine. Or early second would be good. So.
I agree.
I like him. I think he's a good player. It's really sad what happened to him, and it's sad that the NFL chose to penalize gambling over somebody like Sean Watson. But we're not going to get into politics.
Because nobody gambles these days.
Yeah,
yes. Especially not us.
Especially betting on his own team, and he wasn't even playing.
On Twitter for player props.
Well, yeah, he was betting for his team.
And he was betting. Yeah, he wasn't like betting.
It wasn't like he
rose.
Ironically enough, he was betting on the Jag. He was betting on them against the Jags.
Yes, which is hilarious now.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sad. Anyways, can't say enough about Calvin Ridley. I love him. If he's available, pick him up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Ethan, I think that the Nyheim Hines trade to Buffalo is definitely going to be an interesting one. My apologies to the James Cook owners out there.
Gosh,
R.I.P.
I know you go ahead and take the reins, but I just want to put this out there because I don't have him. I dropped him actually, but. Like he was just starting to come on. Like this last game, James Cook had his best game.
We were literally talking about this earlier. He is when you give him playtime, he performs.
Yeah,
he's done well.
It's just that they don't give him playtime.
Go ahead, I just want to put that out there. Yeah. He had his best game, and then they still make this. I just don't understand. Help me understand why they did this.
Okay, so here's my theory. I have a theory on this actually. So the Buffalo Bills, if you look at who they drafted James Cook, a wide receiver who catches the ball really well. They drafted Khalil Shakir, or a running back who catches the ball really well. Khalil Shakir, a wide receiver who runs the ball really well. And what is Nyheim Hines?
Right? He's everything.
He's a running back that catches the ball really well. He can play wide receiver, and he can run the ball.
He's ridiculously fast.
He's kind of these hybrid. And the Bills' offense runs a lot of these little screens instead of actually running the ball.
Yes, it's true.
Right? And they do that a lot. And so I think they're loading up on these guys. I really do. And here's the thing is, yes, Cook has been good.
He was almost a pickup this week. I mean, that didn't happen, obviously.
Yeah, and James Cook he's been good when he's been in. Khalil Shakir even has looked very good with the ball in his hands as well.
Yeah.
This year
they're gonna be so good.
But Nyheim Hines has been there. He's done that. I think he instantly jumps ahead of both of those guys.
Well, he definitely has performed behind Jonathan Taylor better than Devin Singletary has as the starting running back for the Bills.
So put it in perspective of obviously it helps the Bills, it helps Josh Allen a little bit anyways, but for fantasy for Nyheim Hines, do you feel like this is going to be anything as far as do you pick him up? Is he a flex player? Is he nothing? What do you think he's going to be?
He's a wait and see. He's definitely a stash, but we'll see what ends up happening with him. Who knows what's going on in Buffalo right now? I think this definitely helps. It can't hurt Josh Allen. Zach Moss was not doing a whole lot. Nyheim Hines will be more involved than that. I think there might be some funky running back packages.
Well, I was going to say, I really think it's going to be a three-headed monster. I think James Cook, his snap percentage goes down, even though it was pretty low to begin with, and I think it's going to be a three-headed monster. So
I think Hines might line up in the slot a lot more than you think as well, and might take a little less of these touches away than you're thinking as well.
So Isaiah McKenzie's probably here for that.
Highly disagree with you. I think that this has a significant fantasy impact for Nyheim Hines because he has all those things that you look for in a running back. He's a good receiving back. He's fast. The dude can break tackles. He's small. He's shifty. He can get through line. I mean, he's
Austin Eckler light.
He is.
Really.
He is. He
Devin
really is.
Singletary has looked really good, though, as well.
So I don't think Singletary is going to get put on the back burner, but I do think that in passing situations, who do you want on the field? Naheem Hines.
The whole thing about Singletary is they don't run the ball.
I don't agree that Singletary's look good for the
look at his
getting,
but look at his efficiency. So look at his yards per attempt. Look at his receiving yards. Yeah.
Yes.
So he's shifty. He gets the ball. He gets through the line. He's very fast.
But he's just not getting, except for last week or last 2 weeks.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't think any of these players are going to have value, is because they don't run the ball. Like, if any value you're going to get is going to be through the passing game.
Wasn't
that Hines' value?
That's Hines' value. Yeah, I think.
Right, but you're saying that he's going to take over everything.
I don't think he's going to take over everything. I think he's going to get more snaps. I think they're going to slowly push him in, because I really think being behind Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack kind of put Naheem Hines back a little bit. Now he's competing against Singletary, who's not a very good, he's good, but he's not a very good pass back, receiving back. So I think personally he's going to get more time.
Hines is a lot more explosive, in my opinion, than Singletary.
Yeah.
I think Singletary's been very good, and he's been very shifty, but he's like almost a Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yes.
Helaire. I can't remember.
I think he's better than Clyde.
He's looked a little better than Clyde, but I think he's kind of in that tier.
Yeah.
And I think that Hines is interesting in that
last year he went on a stretch, and I can pull up last year real quick. We'll go through this quick.
Singletary?
No, go towards the end of the season. Look at his end of the season.
I mean, end of the season,
14, 16, 18, 21, 25 points. He won people fantasy leagues last year, the last 6 weeks of the year. He can do that. Look at the volume that he had. If he gets the volume, he puts up the fantasy points. The issue right now is they are not giving any volume, and that changes. Great, there's a lot of fantasy value to be had in Buffalo because of the offense they run, but they just haven't been doing that.
Yeah, I think Hines will line up in the slot, and Singletary can be on the field with him. I don't think this is necessarily an either-or thing. I do think that for a lot of underneath routes and screens, it's like Hines is kind of that gadget player that they're going to work in. Sean McDermott is very good at that. And
I'm biased. I've been saying for years that Naheem Hines is
I think he's a really good player, and I thought he was too, but
he got shorted with the fact that the team that he was playing on.
I don't have any interest in Hines, to be honest with you, based off of how many running backs they have, how that's going to play out. You don't know.
True.
Takes up a roster spot. I'm just out on him.
That's fair.
I would say, though, for Colts side of things, because they just traded Hines, I'd go pick up Deion Jackson as a stash, just for the fact that when the 1 week that JT was out, Jonathan Taylor, that he had a huge week. I think it was over 25 points for that week.
Yeah, correct.
And JT actually still has a ankle injury he's dealing with, so he's questionable right now.
Well, he left the game early.
Yeah. So really a high pickup right now to go stash if you can for Deion Jackson.
Is Zach Moss a factor at all in the Colts run game or
no? Man, he's injured, isn't he?
Zach Moss is a big old.
I think he was a bust.
He's a guy.
Yeah, he's a guy. Yeah.
We'll put it that way. We'll be nice.
There's a reason why they threw that 5th round pick in there.
Fair enough.
Eli, you're. Do you want to save yours for the end, or do you want to do yours now? Because this is your.
I'll wait till then because you guys have more trades to actually go through.
Sure. My next one is Jeff Wilson to the Finns. San Francisco receives a 2023 5th round pick. San Francisco, in my opinion, got the better end of this deal, and Jeff Wilson was like a 6th or 7th round pick when they drafted him. Raheem Mostert is clearly the guy in Miami, obviously because they got rid of Chase Edmonds, who was another guy that they received in the offseason. Jeff Wilson had a pretty lackluster impact on the San Francisco backfield. He gets a few snaps, but doesn't really do anything major. I don't think that this is something that's going to have a massive fantasy impact. I think he might over time. So if you're really, really high on Jeff Wilson and you think that there's any potential for him to steal it, it might be worthwhile to pick up. But personally, I wouldn't take too much on it. I think Raheem Mostert's still going to cover the backfield for him.
Raheem Mostert's injured next week. What do you think?
Jeff Wilson, brother.
Yeah, then it's all. Then
it's different.
Because that's the only thing is I will say is that because of Mostert's injury history, that's the only thing. Like I completely agree with you that it's Mostert's game until he loses it. But if he's out, then it gets a lot more interesting. I agree with you, though, that they got rid of Chase Edmonds in order to get Bradley Chubb because they needed help on their defense. Jeff Wilson is kind of the replacement for cheap that they were able to get for that.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know that Jeff Wilson went for a 5th when Kareem Hunt was available for a 4th, and they went Jeff Wilson in that. So
don't worry, I will talk about that later because I got a lot of things to say about that.
just worth noting. I mean, right? It's in that same vein.
I would have traded a 4th round pick for her. Just saying. We'll talk about that though.
That shows a lot of faith San Francisco has in Chris McCaffrey to stay healthy and he's going to be a huge focal point of this offense.
Well, he's playing quarterback. He's a wide receiver. He's a running back. Like he is the offense now.
Too bad you can't score when you're on bye.
Yeah.
If anybody can do it, Chris McCaffrey.
It would be
absolutely.
him.
It would be him.
I'm surprised he didn't put up 30 on his bye week.
I know.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about James Robinson to the Jets, who did get a conditional 6th round pick, which is basically nothing because it's a 6th round pick, and it's conditional, which means that he has to actually play a decent number of snaps.
They gave him away for free, essentially.
I mean, it's kind of wild actually that this happened, and I think this speaks to the fact that James Robinson probably wasn't too happy with the situation with ETN kind of having that growing role.
Mm-hmm.
They probably were doing him a favor and getting him out.
Doing well,
But and Robinson, that's the thing is that he was doing decently well with the touches that he had, and the Jets will use him. He'll be in a split with Michael Carter. Is he going to win you a fantasy league? No. Should he be rostered? Yes.
Do you think that he is going to take over Michael Carter? You think Michael Carter will continue?
It'll be a split.
50-50 split.
Yeah, he'll get the early down work. Michael Carter will get all the passing work. And like we talked about, based off of what we think is going to happen with the Jets, it's going to be a lot of passing work.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jets fans.
I'd rather have Carter than Robinson. Still.
I agree.
Your plane has one engine out and it's going down.
Way to keep it afloat. Zach Wilson's the pilot.
Hey, but talk about the young talent on that roster.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely.
At least they do have some.
You better play
They
some
might
stellar
finally do
defense.
something. They might finally do
Create your own
something.
turnovers. So.
Eli.
So this is not a trade, but I just want to put this out there. Just Packers. Why can't you trade for people? Is it against a religion?
It's Aaron Rodgers.
You have too much cheese. You can't think straight. What's going on? So all these trades that happen, especially in division. Vikings made a big splash. Detroit's trading people away, obviously because they have to, because they are not doing too well. But the Packers, the one team that actually needs the most help is just staying put and not making any trades. Aaron Rodgers just complained about the wide receivers he's had. The ones he does have are old. Randall Cobb's injured. Sammy Watkins has been injured most of the year. They have one rookie that's made some good splashes. We talked about Romeo Doubs, but he's had a bunch of drops.
He's in the doghouse now, man.
Even Lazard, who's been good at times, has been injured too. So there's a huge need, and they do nothing. They just sit on their hands and just let it go.
I did hear that they offered a 2nd round pick for Chase Claypool.
I did hear that.
They did. I did hear that. Yeah.
So they missed out on the. So the effort, I guess, was there, but end of the day, you still end up with nothing.
But there's also so much that they could have done. There's so many guys who are available, and we're going to get into 2 of these guys, arguably 3, in a few minutes that definitely would have been something that they could have gotten that would have sharpened their offense, and they definitely would have been great assets. But it's almost like they kind of just were like, yeah, whatever, man, it's not a big deal. We got them next year.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I'll just kind of jump in if that's all right. And we want to talk a little bit about the guys that wanted to be traded, who openly said that they wanted to be traded, and still were not able to be traded. And the guy that jumps out to me is going to be Brandon Cooks, who came out and left practice today and is peeved because he's on a team that is not doing well. He's a veteran who wants to win. And consistently has done well throughout his entire career, no matter what situation he's been placed in, and has been a warrior.
Doesn't he have the most 1,000-yard games or 1,000-yard seasons of?
He's had
any active?
I think of any active.
He
player.
might, yeah.
It's either him or Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think he might. I would Mike Evans maybe, but yeah, he's definitely up there.
He's in there.
But Brandon Cooks he's been very good for a very long time, and he wanted out. He wants to be done with a team that, quite frankly, is bad, and is vying for the 1st overall pick. He's 29 years old now. He's been in the league for 8 years. I mean, and they didn't trade him, and he just apparently did not attend practice the next day, which says a lot about how he is feeling about this situation. And you know what? It's hard to blame him because that's rough. And Green Bay, why are you not going out and trying to trade for Brandon Cooks, who could have been an excellent asset for Aaron Rodgers right now?
They've been great, and somebody who is a veteran and I would say probably has Aaron Rodgers' respect, or he's already shown that he is worth being on the field. It makes no sense.
Yeah, he's not going to have those mental errors that a rookie's going to have. And Romeo Dobbs has been great as a rookie, but
and he's been.
But it's
yeah.
Brandon Cooks is not going to have those mental errors.
Hasn't been injured. He's played consistently. He's had no significant injury. I mean, the dude is about as consistent as you can get, and just
that's what comes to mind is consistency for Brandon Cooks. He's always there. He's always playing well, and yet he's stuck on a team that is bad.
Yeah, so bad, so bad.
You're right. It is Mike Evans. Mike Evans actually has the most 1,000-yard seasons period in the not in the last few years. But Brandon Cooks is second.
I think he might actually set the NFL record for most in a row.
I think he does. He has. I
believe so.
It's eight in a row.
That's insane.
Which is insane.
Anywho.
Yeah. So I'll jump to another one. As far as players that wanted to be traded and they're upset with the situation and they did nothing. Elijah Moore, which we talked about multiple times this year. He has a couple weeks ago walked away from the team, very upset about his targets from Zach Wilson, and then recently just came back this last week. We talked about him. He had 10 snaps, so they were thinking that they were going to possibly trade him, but then the team did come out and say that they had did no desire to actually trade him and did not come to fruition. But this is a player that is disgruntled. He's come out and said it multiple times. He just came out and said that somebody asked him how his chemistry was with Zach Wilson. He's like, well, I don't get thrown the ball. So it is not great situation currently. He's not a player you want to have on your fantasy roster, but he was somebody that was highly touted. He won people championships last year with his late year run.
Yep.
And now he is delegated to a bench warmer.
So if this ends up as a Kadarius Toney situation, Eli, at what point is it your fault that you're rooting for these guys and then
the wide receiver killer, you can call me? Jeez Louise. I go for it, like just suddenly you're going to get traded.
I got to say this. Elijah Moore had some good games last year and then was injured pretty much towards the end of the season. But I don't think he's at the point where he is touted enough to be able to demand a trade like that and have it respected.
I agree.
He's only in his second year.
He's only in his second year. He didn't play a lot of games last year, and so far this year he's been fairly lackluster except for maybe one or two games. And I really think...
were those Joe Flacco games?
Not even, man. Like, the best game that he had was at the beginning of the season. He got 9.9 points. Like, that's not...
That's true.
That's not trade demanding worthy. And the thing is like... I'm sure you're a great guy, Elijah Moore. I just, have a problem about how this went down. He demanded a trade. He's throwing a temper tantrum because he's not getting the ball.
Agree.
And he's not in the point where he has proven that he is somebody who can do that. So I really think this was something that maybe will hurt his career and kind of makes him look bad to other people. And the fact that he demanded a trade in his second year and he's not proven, I think a lot of people shied away from him and were like, look, man, not willing to deal with it.
If he's not careful, he's going to end up like Kadarius Toney, where his team poops on him for 2 years, then he gets ended up traded to Pat Mahomes throwing him the ball. It's not exactly a cautionary tale, if we're being honest at this point.
I don't think that Kadarius Toney is the rule. He is the exception. I think there's a lot of receivers out there who do this, and then nothing happens.
That's true. That's true. It could definitely go the other way, but...
It's just, I don't think that he should have done that. I think it hurts him.
I agree. He shouldn't have done it. It's childish. It's all that, and he's not going to get the trade. He didn't get the trade. It's only going to reflect bad on him. But I will say, like, the talent was there. The draft capital was there. The talent was there. He showed it on the field last year in a 4 to 5 game stretch where he can be a number one wide receiver.
But it's not a trend at this point.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't earned it the way Cooks has. That's for sure.
He doesn't have the track record, but he was a rookie, and he played on a team with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, and he was the best wide receiver on the field. Like, the talent was there.
It's there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and now he's worried that, Because a lot of people forget too is like when you're an NFL player that big contract coming out of your rookie contract is really the one you're shooting for, and you kind of earn that on your rookie contract. And so I get why he's upset. That being said,
but wasn't he a first round pick?
It is what it is.
Second.
Yeah. I mean, he's got time. He's still got time.
He does have time.
It just seems like it's premature. And you know what? I hope
we'll see what happens. He could turn around and then suddenly become best friends, but we'll see. I definitely don't have
He's got to let Zach Wilson meet his
I
mom.
hope that he fakes an injury all next year after we get put in the doghouse, and then he gets traded to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
There's going to be too many receivers on that team.
Like right before the trade deadline next year. Let's just see.
It's not going to work.
Let's just see. Or maybe he'll go to Aaron Rodgers at the trade deadline next year. I mean, honestly.
Aaron Rodgers is looking worse for wear. I'm sorry, man. You're definitely not looking too good right now. But,
yeah.
I will break into mine and kind of what we'll use to wrap up this episode. If I had a 4th round pick, I would have traded it for you, Kareem Hunt. Somebody who wanted to be traded. Obviously, Chubb is just doing his thing this year. He's looking amazing. I think he's the number 1 running back this year. He's either number 1 or number 2.
Yeah, he's certainly up there. As far as rushing yards?
Rushing yards,
I believe he's number 1.
Yeah. But in fantasy-wise, I think he's like number 3 because I think Christian McCaffrey, whatever.
We can look that up.
So, I definitely think that
top 5 running back no matter how you slice it.
He is. And I think Kareem Hunt is somebody who is really talented. He had a little unfortunate thing happen with the Chiefs, and they kind of premature parted with him. He definitely gave Chubb a run for his money when he was playing for the Browns early on after they got him. And the fact that they're asking for a 4th round for him, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
I think he's somebody he's a good receiver. He's fast. He's explosive. He's extremely athletic. He might be getting up in there in the years, but he's somebody who a lot of teams are not in a good place with their running backs, and he definitely could improve their spots. And I'm a little sad that nobody really took him because I think that he's worth that 4th round pick that they were asking for him.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Wilson goes for a 5th, but Kareem Hunt doesn't go for a 4th.
That's what I'm saying.
It seems strange to me.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Must be something. It has to be some sort of he wanted the contract immediately or something.
Maybe
that could be involved with that.
I really don't know.
He's getting older too.
He's unrestricted this next year, right? This is his last year in the contract. I'm sure if he was going to get traded, he probably wanted somebody to sign him to a long-term deal, and maybe that just couldn't come up because I don't think the 4th round pick. Couldn't have been the only reason, exactly.
Yeah, he's only 27.
He's only 27. I mean, granted, this is the year when the shelf life normally starts to hit, but he definitely, he shows the potential that he could be a guy. He doesn't get injured very often. He definitely is the kind of guy who could
has great hands,
stay around.
Is good in the passing game and everything else, and so, I don't know, it's interesting.
If I was running a team and I had a 4th round pick, I would have traded for him in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Just saying. So,
take
that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Well, that pretty much wraps everything that we
lot to cover, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Good luck on waivers and.
What do you always say?
May your bid be $1 above everybody else in your league.
Except for
me. Then rub it in their faces.
That's right. Unless you're in my league, in which case, better be lower than me.
Have a good one, Fantasy Play Callers.
Awesome.
Like and subscribe.
Next week.
Hit it.